Today I'm making Dal Dhokli, which is such a Gujarati classic. It's basically lentil soup with diamond-shaped dumplings, and it is delicious. It's tangy and spicy and a little bit sweet. It's just perfectly balanced, traditional classic Gujarati flavors, and it's a one-pot meal, perfect for the winter. So let me show you how to make that. This looks like a lot of ingredients, but I promise it's a really easy recipe. And I'll also show you some of the things that you can leave out if you don't have it to still make a perfectly delicious Dal Dhokli. I'm gonna make this Dal Dhokli in the Instant Pot because cooking dal in the Instant Pot is so much easier than doing it on the stovetop, but you can definitely do it on the stovetop or in a regular pressure cooker as well. So I'm going to start with my rinsed tuvar dal or tur dal. I have a cup of dal here. Add about 3 cups of water to that. And a little tiny bit of ghee to avoid the foaming. Set the valve to sealing and cook 9 minutes on high pressure. I'm going to actually set this aside, and while that is cooking, I'm going to make the dough. So I have a bowl here, and I have some whole wheat flour. So this is Indian rotli no lot or atta, and this is just really super finely ground whole wheat flour. A little bit of salt, some turmeric. So essentially what I'm making here is a tikhi bhakri no lot, which is a spicy roti, and these are going to be our dumplings. A little bit of red chili powder. I'm gonna add some carom seeds and just mix that around with my hand. I'm gonna add a dollop of ghee, about a teaspoon, and just mix that in. Just distribute that evenly across the flour. Looking for a sandy texture here, so just break that up. That looks evenly distributed. So now I'm going to knead my dough with some water. Add just a little bit of water at a time. And the amount of water that you need will differ based on what the weather is like that day, how much moisture there is in the air. So you'll need to kind of adjust it by the day. So that's why it's really important to add a little bit of water at a time. Almost there. We're looking for a medium consistency dough. We don't want it to be too wet or too dry. The dough is ready. I'm just going to cover this and set this aside for a couple of minutes while I go wash my hands. I'm just using a towel to put my adni on so that it doesn't move around. This is a traditional Indian rolling board that we call adni in Gujarati. And then I have my Gujarati rolling pin, but really any rolling pin will do. And I'm just going to roll those into thin rotli. So grab a section, and you can use some dry flour if you need to roll these out. Just roll it the way you would normally roll a rotli. The technique is to kind of have a fist on one hand and an open hand and just gently roll around the center outwards so that the rotli rotates and rolls out evenly. Okay, you can see that this is pretty thin. I'm going to get it a little tiny bit thinner and then move on to the next one. That's perfect. So you can see how thin that is. So I'm going to set them on a plate. So this one is done. Set it over here and roll out the next one. Use a little bit of dry flour. Okay. That is done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this bowl out of here, and I'm going to cut these rotlis into diamond-shaped little pieces. So just cut in the middle on the diagonal, and you can make them as big or small as you like. And then a diagonal on the other side. And they don't have to be perfect. You can just guess at the size. Not a big deal if they're not exactly the same. Just do your best. It's really important to do is make sure that you cut all the way through and you separate each piece. I'm just going to separate it and put it into my dough bowl. I'm putting all of my pieces on top of each other in this bowl, and this is because there's plenty of dry flour and they are not sticking to each other. But if your dough is a little bit more wet and your pieces are sticking to each other, you can lay them out on a sheet pan or on a plate so that they don't end up in a big sticky lump. Or you can just make sure that there's plenty of dry flour on them before you transfer. So my dal is cooked. Just gonna move it back to the center. I'm just going to open that up. Okay, so this dal is nice and cooked. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mash with the back of my spoon about 10 to 15 times to get that really good dal texture, the silky smooth dal texture. So just kind of push the dal against the edges of the Instant Pot and stir. Okay, that looks perfect. So I'm going to set this to saute mode. I'm going to just whisk it really fast a couple of times. Okay. Then I'm going to add about 2 cups of water. Give that a good mix. Now I'm going to add the papdi, which is just seeds and the skins of the papdi, but you could use edamame, you could use fresh peas, you could use tuvar seeds, so pigeon peas, really any kind of green bean works. So you could use chopped up green beans also, those work really well. I have some ginger paste. Now add the rest of the salt. The turmeric, the red chili powder, the kokum, and if you don't have kokum, you could use lemon juice, you can use amchur. The point of the kokum is to add some sourness, so really anything you have that has a sour flavor will work. Some green chilies, and the jaggery. You can also use brown sugar or regular sugar if you like, or even maple syrup will work just fine. Okay, and give that a good mix. And I'm actually going to move this aside again and do the vaghar for this dal. So add a couple of teaspoons of ghee and let that get nice and hot. Add the mustard seeds or the rye. Add the cumin seeds. The hing. A piece of cinnamon. 3 cloves. Some fenugreek seeds or methi dana. And curry leaves. Let those cook for a few seconds, and then we're going to pour them into our dal. So I'm just going to move this away and then I'll pour that in. pour this into the dal. Give that a good stir. So the tricky part here is to make sure that I'm cooking both the beans and the dhokri. And so depending on what kind of beans you're using, you may have to cook a little bit longer before you add the dhokri. So you want to make sure that the consistency of the dal is nice and thin before you add the dhokri, because it's going to thicken it. This is looking a little bit thick to me, so I'm going to add a half a cup of water. And bring this to a rolling boil. The dal has to be at a rolling boil before the dhokri goes in. Otherwise, it's going to stick together and you're going to end up with lumpy messes in there. You want the dhokri to be nice and separate and fluffy and just beautifully cooked in the dal. Okay, now it's at a nice rolling boil. So I'm going to add the dhokri. It's really important to add the dhokri one at a time. So I'm just going to grab them one at a time and start adding them in there. After adding a few, be sure to very, very gently stir, because we want to make sure that they don't stick to the bottom. There it is. All the pieces are in. Give it a gentle stir. And I'm going to cover this and cook for about 10 to 12 minutes. All right, so this is done. Let me check to see how it is. I'm going to take one out on my plate and taste it, check. Now's a good time to kind of taste for making sure the spices are where you want them, has enough salt, and that the dhokri is cooked. Oh, that's perfect. It is a little bit thicker than I like, because I think it's really delicious when the dal is a little bit more liquidy. So I'm going to add a little tiny bit of water. Just kind of get it to the consistency that I like. You could add as much water or as little as you like. If you prefer a thicker dal dhokri, that is entirely up to you. Perfect. This looks fantastic. I also want to show you that if you look at the thickness of the dhokri, it has thickened from when we put it in, because it fluffs up while it cooks. You can adjust the sour or the salt if you like at this point. I'm going to add a little bit of ghee, because we're good Jews and we add ghee to everything at the end. So just a little dollop is perfect. You can skip the step if you like. Add that in, and then some cilantro leaves for garnish. And there you have it. Perfect dal dhokri. Such a fabulous winter dinner. Ah, delicious. I'm going to add some cilantro. I know there's kokum in there, but I like it a little bit more sour, so I like to add a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice at the end. And then if you're so inclined, a dollop of ghee never hurts. Oh, so excited. Oh, it's delicious. So good. And so comforting. It's just warm and it's delicious. The soup part, the dal, is very similar to a traditional Gujarati dal. It is sweet and sour and spicy. And the dhokri are basically just spicy flour dumplings, and they just add this chewy and delicious texture, and it's just such a perfect comfort food. Yeah, so if you'd like to follow me for more Gujarati recipes or things that I make up with Indian flavors, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my blog, indiafile.com.